Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We'll give the rest of our audience a minute to kind of like trickle in before we get started here. Right. I think we're at a good spot. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the today's webinar. I am Nicolette Rickon, Growth Marketing Manager. Before we get started, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. First, this webinar is recorded, and a copy of the recording as well as the presentation will be shared sometime after today. If you have any questions, I encourage our audience members to utilize the Q&A feature within Zoom. We will review the questions and save time at the end of the presentation to answer them. And so with that, we've got a lot of exciting things to cover today. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speakers. First, I'm thrilled to introduce our host, Matt Schaefer, Go-To Marketing Manager. And Matt brings a wealth of experience in product marketing and strategy to the forefront of the EV industry. He has over 15 years of experience across various industries and thrives on transforming company strategies into unconventional creative approaches. And finally, we're honored to have Jake Purcell, Senior Director of Comcast Smart Solutions, with us today. Jake is the Senior Director of Sales and Operations at Comcast, and where he leads the IoT innovation strategies that help businesses and communities become safer, smarter, and more sustainable. With over a decade of experience in technology sales and operations and telecom strategy, Jake brings a deep understanding of how connected infrastructure drives world impact across industries. We're very excited to have you both join us today. And Matt, I'll pass it over you to get us started.
Sounds great. Thanks, Nicolette. Looking forward to the conversation, Jake. So let's just go ahead and jump right in here. Just a high level kind of what's going on in the EV landscape right now. It's been an interesting year to say the least, I think, in the EV space. Y'all on the call are probably familiar with that. But what we're really starting to see are state level program implementation and NEVI funding. Um, Obviously, federal policy has been changing, a lot in flux there, but a number of states, Texas, California, are advancing EV structure efficiently, making sure that there are still funds, there are still processes to get chargers put in the ground, and support those EV drivers that they have in their state. Others are facing some challenges with program implementation, and there's certainly some, significant variation in state by state approach to how this is going. And so I think it's important to kind of look at, yes, there is a national um, situation here. There's a national thing playing out here, but we have to look at state level and what's going on in your states. And that's where I think, companies like ours can really help you guys navigate all of that. Consumer adoption and technology evolution. EV adoption does continue to evolve. Obviously, we saw, I think, the best quarter ever in Q3. Um, Anticipating a little bit of a drop off there as the incentive, the rebate goes away, but still 90+% of people who drive EVs want to buy another EV. And so we will continue to see adoption up, and those people are going to still need chargers. Most charging is still occurring at home, which is great if you live in a single family home and have a garage and have access to your panel. Causes some challenges in multifamily, and I think that's an opportunity for us all to really go after. Um, and then really we see faster chargers being deployed more frequently now. Most DCFC installations are really using those 400 kW chargers now versus older installations that were in the 150 to 200 range. And cars can take that. So as you're building out your infrastructure and as you're looking at what your program should include, think about how much faster that's going to push cars through and what services and what things that you want to offer in a shorter period of time as people are charging their cars. And then growth in charging infrastructure. So despite the federal policy shift under the OBBA, charging infrastructure continues to expand. Um, Obviously, the future is less uncertain with all of the OBBA still kind of looming over us. But with NEVI funding back and continued demand, we think that it will continue to grow. And I think on the next slide, we have kind of a graph of what we've seen so far. So the industry's not stopping, it's kind of recalibrating. It's kind of looking at, okay, where can we put the right chargers? Where can we charge the right amount by kilowatt uh, energy? Where can we grow? And so we are going to continue to see this line probably flatten a little bit, but continue to go up and to the right. And it's just now at this point, it's smarter. It's getting smarter about where we deploy, how we deploy, what our goals are. And I think Jake's really going to give us some great insights in that, into some of those decisions that we all need to make as we move forward into this next iteration of what EV charging infrastructure looks like. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Nicolette. How do you stay ahead in an evolving market? Well, there's a few different ways you can certainly do this. One, integrate and optimize services. So, if you are running a C-store and you're looking to generate more business, installing EV charging, doing some e-vouchers, things like that. So folks who come in and charge a certain amount can get a drink, or who buy a drink can charge a certain amount, or you can kind of give reciprocal benefits. Certainly look at, if you have a commercial real estate properties, how can you use the current infrastructure you have, the current foot traffic you have to really drive some more EV charging? And how do you use EV pricing to really draw people into your location as well? So getting, again, smart, strategic, leaning on those partners that you have to really support you in that. Focus on the customer experience. It's table stakes now that chargers are going to work. We're getting a lot better with that. The chargers that are coming out are a lot more robust. The infrastructure behind supporting those chargers is a lot better. So now we need to say, okay, how are we providing the best charging experience? Can people pull up, plug in and charge? Can they easily pay? Or all of those things. So making sure that that customer experience is really top notch will differentiate you and your company as we move into this next phase. Leveraging partnerships, working with companies who can support you and your goals. So setting out sort of a future state, where do you want to be in 5, 6, 7, 10 years with your EV charging program? And then building those partnerships today so that you can really grow into that, I think is really important as well. Don't start with today as your goal, start with 5 to 10 years as your goal, and establish partnerships and relationships to really drive to that. And then similarly, choosing a scalable solution. You don't want to choose a solution that's single-threaded, that only offers level 2 charging, that only offers DCFC. You want to offer a solution that can grow with your need over time, that can maximize your current infrastructure over time, but provide what you and your drivers are going to evolve to need again in the next 5 to 10 years. That's really the best way to make the most out of the money that you're investing today and get the most juice out of the squeeze in that timeline. So that's how we can kind of stay ahead. Jake's going to dive into to a lot of this actually as we go through. And so Jake, why don't you kind of give us a little overview of who you are and who Comcast Smart Solutions is?
Thanks, Matt. And thank you so much for having me join today. It's always fun to come on and talk about thought leadership in the EV charging market and just technology space as a whole. So again, thank you. I'm Jake Purcell, Senior Director of Sales and Operations for our Comcast Smart Solutions Group within Comcast. I'm sure many people are probably more familiar with Comcast as being a legacy speeds and feeds type of business, but we are a very large multinational technology organization, entertainment organization. And the business unit that I represent, Smart Solution, is one small piece of that. Where we came from, I think, is an interesting story. So I'll just give you the backstory and history. Probably, gosh, 8+ years ago, at the time, a lot of municipal CIOs, enterprise business CIOs and CTOs were asking Comcast specifically, what are you doing with technology? What are you doing with EV charging? What are you doing with AI analytics? At the time, smart cities was a buzzword. And 10 years ago, things were probably in their infancy stage, to say the least. But a lot of ideas and thoughts were bubbling up. And Comcast, we have thousands of facilities, hundreds and hundreds of retail stores through our residential brands. We own theme parks and movie studios. Clearly, a lot was happening, but we didn't have like a really good, position, thought leadership, or ability to recommend anything to our strategic clients and partners in the space. And so that's where myself and a few other colleagues came together and really started to pilot, test, research, understand what we were doing, and put together ecosystems of different technologies that we can advise on to our clients. And that's where Comcast Smart Solutions came to be, is essentially that strategic partner to help advise and provide value-added services to our clients beyond just our traditional connectivity solutions, managed solutions that you probably think most of Comcast for. So we have a whole ecosystem of things, as you can see on the PowerPoint slide, but really excited to talk about mobility solutions with EV charging today, and EV Connect being one of our great partners in the space. Oh, and Matt, I think you're on
Yeah, there we go. 5 years into this working from home thing, and I'm still figuring out the mute button. No, that's great. Thank you for the introduction and for the sort of the history lesson there. It's really helpful to kind of see where you're coming from, and I think it couches the answers to your questions really well as we go through this. So, all right, let's jump into the first question here and get started. So, Jake, from your experience, what should organizations really keep in mind when they're planning that EV charging deployment, from site assessment to evaluating the benefits of their business to sort of that long-term scalability that we talked about just a little bit ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first, thought that comes to mind with this is, identifying, some strategic partners in the space that you can just bounce some ideas off of, is an important thing. Like, who can you trust? There's thousands of EV charging companies out there in the marketplace. And so who do you choose? Who do you partner with? You can, as you mentioned earlier, anybody can put in an EV charger, and is it going to work for you in the short term or scale? That always becomes a challenge. So I think in the early days when you're first kind of evaluating it, it's what are the specific use cases that I'm trying to solve for in the short term right now, and like, where do we want to head potentially in the future with managing a network of EV chargers as a business, or maybe I don't want to manage them. Like, what is that experience? Because there's so many different business models, there's so many different use cases, there's so many different companies. It can be daunting, and oftentimes this type of project will land with somebody in finance or procurement that is not necessarily an expert on EV charging, or may never have driven an EV before. So that creates some complications for them as a business. So I think identifying a strategic partner that you can bounce ideas off of in a neutral format, just to like start developing the business case and value for your organization is really important. I think in the over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been lots of buzz around EVs, and maybe some false promises too out there around what the market's going to do in the revenue opportunities from EV charging and deploying an EV charging network. And so I think you really need to evaluate that with a strong partner that can give you some unbiased, or hopefully not too biased, opinions on the space, and what it means for their business. Then as you mentioned earlier, there are many other more like tactical type of questions that you need to, think about from a business model perspective, right? Electrical capacity, right, at your facilities. Oftentimes people think, hey, it's like putting in an outlet in my facility, but it's not. And grid capacity, understanding how to work with your utilities is a big part of this, obviously, and costs and funding and programs associated with that also go into it. And so again, having a good partner that can help you through that process and advise you through that process is important. Locations of chargers, different pricing strategies, different partnership strategies for sponsorship or other ways to monetize the units, and either subsidize expenses for deployment, or generate new revenue streams besides just traditional kind of pricing strategies. You need to think about that and develop that more holistic business model and approach to it. And then obviously zoning and permitting and many other factors go into this. But in the onset, I think having a good partner that you can bounce ideas off of and kind of begin to develop that business strategy, business model, business case to get that approved and developed and across the finish line is key. And then all of the other deployment things are solvable problems, although complex and complicated. But with the right partners, they're going to have that expertise and be able to deploy that for you at scale, and think about the more holistic vision of what you're trying to achieve from an EV charging program.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Jake. And sort of think about if you're building a building or building a house, if you work with a good architect and planner up front, the house is going to have a strong foundation. It's going to have walls that are built on that foundation, that are built to withstand the weather in the area that you live. It's going to have the electrical that you need. So spending that little bit of time and that little bit of resources up front is going to really pay dividends, so you don't have to rebuild the house in 5 years in the first windstorm. So I think, yeah, absolutely, kind of building out that plan and really understanding how is this going to actually impact my business. It's not just an outlet, it's actually a revenue stream. And so if you think about it from that perspective, from the onset, it makes the planning a lot more important and a lot more palatable as you look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a monetizable amenity. There's very few of those
Mhm.
in the, for workplace or home type of charging experiences, or retail. So it has, definitely a lot of thought needs to go into it. I'd say most of the clients that we engage with, their facilities managers, across the country have deployed chargers or been responsible for deploying the chargers. And now they have a hodgepodge of a bunch of different
Mhm.
hardware, bunch of different software, and they
Mhm.
have no idea what's happening. And now they're coming back and saying, hey, I need to pause. I need to inventory what I have out there. I need like a holistic approach to this to network all of these chargers together. And sometimes, unfortunately, they have to rip and replace hardware. But that is a real challenge for many businesses now that are trying to take a more sophisticated approach, more strategic approach to managing their charging networks.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you, Jake. Appreciate that. So I think on the next question that we're going to get to here, Nicolette, do we have another question? There we go. I thought we had another one. Um, why is network management software important to success of an EV charging program? Can you provide any examples of how? And I think you started to kind of get into that actually with the last answer that you gave, in terms of that sort of hodgepodge of hardware and software and trying to manage it all. But would love to hear a little bit more about that. Why is that important? And give us some examples of how that's gone well and how it hasn't.
Yeah, this is charging hardware is a lot of, I'd say sometimes it's a race to zero on the hardware, right? Like it is uh, a I shouldn't say it's commoditized. It's not commoditized, but there's some differentiation in the hardware. But it's just hardware. It's plug, right? Although some's better than others. But the real magic of or secret sauce, I would say, in deploying EV charging as a software. Um, Having, a strong network management solution in place, there's two sides of it, right? There's, the user interface and application. Obviously, that's important for having a user-friendly experience and a good UI there, obviously, for the end user. But on the management side, in being able to manage all of your sites, all of your charging stations is mission critical. And if you don't have a strong solution in place on the software side, you're not going to be able to understand what's been deployed, where it's been deployed, is it online, is it offline, creating those like unique pricing strategies. That's all unlocked through a strong software platform. The other piece of it too is having open standards, right, with the OCPP hardware. Now you can layer on software onto multiple types of hardware. Those open standards we believe are really important from a scalability perspective and a cost savings perspective for many. And then on top of that, you get into other, unique features within, the software platforms like AI diagnostics tools to help with troubleshooting. The last thing you want is to have a charger down and have to wait for a technician to come out to, look at it or power cycle, right? A charging unit when, much of that can be done remotely now with remote diagnostic tools. And so I think, software is really where, the magic of all this comes together. That's the differentiator. That's the secret sauce between, all of these, different platforms that are out there. And also like integrations with, other technologies, right? With property management software systems or other building management software solutions in place, whether that's in hospitality or multifamily or at the workplace. That is, continues to develop and create, more user-friendly tools for our clients. And beyond that, obviously talked about a couple examples or an example of clients that are running into challenges, right, where they have a hodgepodge of different technology out there. The software is really what solves that for folks. That's the single most important decision they can make is like a good, strong, foundational software solution that can really solve all their use case needs or as many of them as possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you talked a little bit about this being a monetizable amenity. It is not if you don't have software.
Yeah,
I mean, it
yeah.
is just at that point, you're just spewing electrons into cars and
Yeah.
not making any money on it. So
I
if
was
this,
talking to a client yesterday about that. They're like, we have a handful of chargers that are different locations, and we're just giving away the power for free. We'd really like to be able to monetize it. I was like, I bet you would like to be able to
yeah,
monetize
yeah.
that. Yeah. But
Yeah,
obviously,
and I think too, I think it's important to call out, not that long ago, drivers expected power to be free, and that's
yeah,
changed. The driver mentality has changed, and drivers understand that, this is infrastructure that someone paid for. I don't expect to take this for free, and so there is a bit more understanding, I guess, or appetite from a driver perspective to pay. And so just being smart about how much to charge. And there are tools and there's partners and things that you can use to kind of figure that out. We don't expect everyone to be a master, price setter, but pricing is okay. It is okay to charge people for the power that you're providing them. And I think that's just important to say.
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's unique things like subscription-based models,
Mhm.
in the, especially on like the multifamily side or workplace side. I mean, you can do some really interesting things that I think a lot of folks don't think about, but you're 100% right. Like that's the expectation now is, unless you're at your own personal home,
Right.
but even then you're paying for the electricity,
Yeah.
right? He has to pay the electricity bill.
Yeah. My
So I
utility
think,
doesn't give me things for free, I've noticed.
yeah, oh, we could talk solar, go all off grid,
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
it's most people are paying one way or another, and so yeah, you're spot on. There is that level of expectation now in the marketplace, which is good, right?
Yeah.
And I liked what you were talking about too, in like the C-store space or fast casual restaurants, giving different like couponing or different promotions to give people maybe their first 30 minutes free, right? You
Right.
can do so many interesting things, and I think it goes back to like the EV Connect software platform, right? There's just great capabilities there that we can work with clients on to create that use case that they're trying to create and unlock that for them.
Perfect. Great. And I think just kind of carrying this conversation to the next question, what are the most effective ways you're seeing site hosts or businesses really maximize those results? We started talking about it. It's pricing, it's different package structures, it's enticing people to come in. But what are some other effective ways that you'd like to call out?
Yeah, two come to mind. Definitely. You know, I I was at our public library in my town. I'll just tell this story because it's really applicable to this. But they have a couple chargers at the library, and I was walking by with my kids, and a gentleman was there, and he looked lost at the charger. And he didn't know what to do. He didn't know how, to start the session. He was trying, and he couldn't get it to work. And he asked for help, right? And I'm luckily familiar enough with how to charge an EV, and so I approached him to help him. And his experience at a previous charger was that he could just tap and charge with his credit card. But this was a different type of charger, and you needed to download a specific mobile application to start the charging session. He didn't have that, mobile application. And so it was a whole thing of him trying to figure out how to use that charger. But I thought it was, a great example of user friendliness, and really comes down to understanding who your users are. In the case of like a public charger from a city or municipality, having like that tap and go type of functionality for charging is probably really important, and that's a gating factor for this person to be able to use that charger. He wasn't able to use that, and that created an abandonment. He left and went somewhere else that he was more familiar with, where he knew how to use it. And I'm just like, gosh, that was a terrible customer experience. I didn't deploy that charger, just for the record. It was my town. It was not an EV Connect product either. But it created, a huge challenge, right, for that business to capture that revenue. So I think from a site host perspective, you need to understand who your user is going to be and understand how they want to use your charger and how you can make it as user friendly as possible for them. So you eliminate as many of those, gates or obstacles to get to charging. So make it as easy as possible, right, for your end user and how they want to use it. So that's definitely number one. Number two is it's all about utilization, right? Like how many people am I going to have, in that parking spot so that I can monetize them? And if you have to, sometimes you have to penalize folks for, taking up that parking spot. So thinking about what that penalty structure is to get them out, right? You want somebody there, but you don't want them there too long. You need to get them out and have some incentive, right? Or penalties to get them out of that spot so the next person could come in and charge their vehicle, right? So I think that's like another kind of interesting kind of component of this is, obviously we talk a lot about different pricing strategies, but then at a certain point you want that person to leave, right? So the next person can come in so you can further, monetize that. Because once that vehicle's, fully charged and it's just sitting there, not using up any energy, we still, have to find different structures, right, from a pricing perspective to make sure that there's even more incentive for them to leave, so the
Right.
next person can come.
Yeah.
So
You
yeah,
want to turn those
utilization.
tables, so to speak.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Utilization is key. So, thinking about those different use cases and how to approach it, there's a lot of different tier structures, right, that works for you. And it's really going to depend on, your business, but, thinking about who those users are, what are those use cases, and how do you do it as efficiently as possible, and how can I be using those chargers as much as possible, because that's where, your monetization, is really maximized.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd add to that too, and I'd love your perspective on this. Think about total monetization and optimization. So when you're trying to figure out which types of chargers, are you going to have 400 kW chargers? Are you going to have level 2 chargers? Understand what your drivers, what your customers are doing. So if you're a C store or a gas station that's adding chargers, well, people don't want to hang out there for 2, 3 hours while they're charging their car from, for as long as they need to. So they're not looking for level 2 charging there. They're looking for DC fast and as fast as they can get. But if you're a mall or you're a retail location, okay, maybe you have a captive audience for closer to an hour, 2 hours, and you're looking at basket ring. And the longer someone's in your mall, the little bit they might spend a little bit more money. Your tenants might pay a little bit more in rent for that. So don't, yes, certainly look at the monetization of the EV charging, but also look at the total monetization of that person, of that vehicle while they're on your property. Jake, I don't know if you have anything to add to that or if you have any experience from installs at those different types of locations, but I think it's important for people to first understand their business and then understand how EV charging is going to help them optimize that business.
Yeah, I think that makes, just like basket size, right, for orders, it's like the upgrade when you're bringing someone into your location, is it going to drive, additional foot traffic? I think for brick
Mhm.
and mortars, right, they're continuously struggling, right, with foot traffic. So the more I can get someone to my location and have them be there the longer, mall example is a perfect example of that. I think like coffee shops, right, or like the fast casual restaurants, little bit different than a C store, right,
Mhm.
or a retailer. But there's so many different examples of that where I can get folks into my locations. They're going to be there for 30 minutes, or in the case of a mall, right, 2 hours. That's an ideal kind of scenario, while you can have that differentiation and types of charging experiences there. So yeah, definitely. The other thing I'll add too, like um, uh, more kind of white glove concierge types of solutions. I
Mhm.
think like airports are really interesting, right? Obviously, rental car centers, have many, but like for short-term, long-term parking options there, and bringing in other more almost like a ballet type of charging
Mhm.
experiences.
Mhm.
Like you can do some really interesting things that we're seeing in the marketplace right now to, create that, unique experience to drive charging as a value add, to like a parking garage or something like that. We also see sponsorship as being like another really interesting component of it. I think digital signage is a little bit tougher. People aren't, it's not like a drive-through movie where you're going to sit in your car for, an hour and a half or 2 hours and watch what's on the screen because of mobile phones now. But, sponsoring EV charging locations, we see that really comes big time in sports and entertainment.
Mhm.
We see in professional sports stadiums. We see it, with also in large mixed use developments. We're seeing it in airports too as well. So it's just like another outside the box way to monetize those chargers, help offset deployment expenses, or create net new revenue streams more long term too as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's really smart. Thank you. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. Somebody's interested in charging. We kind of meant to like 301, 401 here. Let's go back to 101. What's your top piece of advice for getting started the smart way in a way that's not going to leave you with boho chic in 5 years for your entire charging program? What do they need to do today?
Yeah, there's technology is moving so fast. So that's like one component you need to realize. Like you're not going to get it perfect when you deploy this technology. Like, we see it all the time. Think about, a smartphone 5 years ago. It's very
Mhm.
different. Today, the technology has shifted. It's amazing how fast technology is moving. The same thing's going to happen. So, nothing's future proof. So you're going to have to make a decision. But when you, start with, setting a clear strategy, really defining like what your goals are with this, and having, some North Stars or KPIs that you're trying to go after, and define that, why do I want to do this? And does it make sense? And do we have, the right business case to start? And, what are some additional revenue streams that maybe we want to explore as, stage or phase, 2, 3, 4? That's, really where it all starts. And, having the right partner, and I know talked about this early on, is mission critical to that. People have tremendous experience in deploying technology and have learned all the hard lessons along the way.
Mhm.
I think we have a lot of willing partners. Comcast SmartStore is a very willing partner to engage with you, to just have knowledge share to help you, ideate and really develop that strategy along the way. I think that's, really where you want to start day one. It starts with, how do I set the strategy, set my goals, define my, initial KPIs, and, create a plan, phase one, phase two, short term and long term with that partner. The charging landscape is moving quickly, to say the least. Look how far we've come from like DC fast chargers, and what Nevi originally went out
Mhm.
to deploy, and it kind of changed because the technology changed, and our ability to deliver faster, better charging experience changed. And so I think that's a real big component of it too, is just understanding that, hey, this is a moving target, but starting with that strategy, those use cases, the goals, in defining that's really where you want to start.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. And when you're looking at partners too, you mentioned it earlier, Jake, OCPP. You're talking about, hey, this thing's gonna change. Be ready for that change. A great way to do that is by working with OCPP certified partners, and chargers and software, and making sure that you're kind of almost built-in backups for when things do need to change, because we know they are. And then honestly, kind of looking at the companies that you're working with and seeing, how financially strong are they right now? Are they going to be here for the long run? And or are they kind of teetering on the edge of barely making it in this industry? And so just a couple like very tactical things in my opinion to look at OCPP, and really kind of looking at the financials. And Comcast can really, yeah, does a lot of that sort of legwork, I think, for people that they're working with, to say, yeah, these are companies we vetted, we believe in them, we think they're going to be here long term, and they utilize the tools that we believe they need to utilize. But I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think you're spot on, right? Like choosing the right software partner, right? That's, somebody that, is trustworthy name in the industry. There's a lot of cool different niche technologies out there, but I think, having something that can solve many use cases and many different verticals really, says a lot. I go back to a former colleague of mine always would say, who do you want your dancing partner to be, right?
Yeah.
That's the real analogy of it. Like I want somebody that's going to be in it for the long haul with me. I
Yeah.
want a stable company that's going to back this and be there and pick up the phone, good or bad, to help me and support me long term, right? That's the type of relationship that you need in that strategic partnership. And that's what we try to do, from Comcast perspective, right? As a large company in this, we're trying to bring some stability oftentimes into unstable markets.
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. All right, so we're starting to talk a little bit about this. I guess just really quickly, where do you see the landscape evolving over the next 2 to 5 years? We've talked a little bit about the technology evolving and expanding. What are you seeing as you're having conversations with the companies that you work with?
Yeah, I think there's a few, just like from a technology perspective to
Yeah.
start there. I think standardization, we're starting to see it from the car manufacturers, right?
Hmm.
Like it's like a cell phone, right? Or Blu-ray versus DVD, HDVD, or any type of standardization out there. It's going to happen. We're going to see it happen, and that's going to hopefully create some tailwinds and some speed in the marketplace because there's a little bit of uncertainty with that. And I think we're piecing it together with certain ways, but that's the more standardization or open standards alignment, the better. So I think that's definitely something that's going to continue to solidify. I think you mentioned this with the political environment earlier on. I think uncertainty has been a painful component of this with any administration change. It
Sure.
doesn't.
Yeah.
And so I think some more finite certainty. We're starting to see it obviously with NEVI and other programs, but I think that will help again accelerate, speed up things, get that confidence back up in the marketplace. We're not seeing a slowdown in EVs coming to market, right? So the demand is continuing to rise, which is great. I think there's going to be some really cool technologies out there that are coming, right? We're seeing pilots of like wireless charging technology, electrified roadways, and as those pilots and state and federal funded kind of pilot programs come to life where they're testing those technologies, we're gonna continue to see that evolve. I'm still hopeful of the electric flying car drone thing, but I don't know if it'll be ready in the next 2 to 5 years. But looking forward to seeing that come to life. But I know a lot of R&D is happening in that space too as well. But I think those are the main things: faster chargers. Maybe some different business models from the battery technology side. We see improvements there, but I'd say those are probably the big changes. We'll probably see some consolidation in the marketplace too
Mhm.
from
Mhm.
some different companies, hopefully, which I think will be good. It's pretty crowded with a lot of different companies out there right now. So a little bit of consolidation to continue to bring stability into the marketplace will be good too as well.
Yeah, no, those are great predictions. And then kind of as we look at this, I think we're wrapping up here. I think we have a couple questions maybe have come in, but what are the most common reasons your customers are choosing to move forward with EV charging projects? How are they defining value to their organization? We've talked a little bit about this, but maybe just tie it up in a bow for us.
Yeah, I mean, customer demand is real. If you
Mm.
don't have EV chargers at, your workplace, your multifamily property, like there is demand, clear demand that you're missing out on right now. And so we see most of our clients, they're trying to put it in to meet demand. There is still some, regulatory stuff too, also driving it. But consumer demand is 100% there, and they're feeling the pressure to put it in. So I think that is, definitely, the big driver is, companies, businesses are all seeing, that consumer demand that's driving the behavior. Oh, or, it's a fleet. Someone's trying to electrify a fleet or
Mhm.
something like that. We're also seeing a lot of those initiatives too as well. Obviously, lots of incentives have been around for that, but big pushes for, sustainable minded companies that are trying to, drive, more carbon neutral footprints, things like that. So I think it's consumer demand, and then, obviously the early adopters is the other component of it.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. And sort of on that vein of consumer demand, we did get a question that came in sort of as consumers' expectations evolve, what trends should businesses be paying closest attention to in order to stay relevant?
That's a great question. I think staying I think staying up to speed, right, and just understanding your consumer is going to be in their use case for why they would charge at
Hmm.
your location, whether that's workplace, retail, or at home, or for your fleet. That's always going to be the key component is just understanding like why would someone come to my business or come to this location? How are they going to be using the charger? How am I going to be using that charger? And what are the appropriate use cases and monetization strategy behind that? I think as car technologies change, right? Speed of chargers and choosing the right infrastructure to put in is really critical. And like you look at putting in a 80 amp charger versus a 32 amp charger. A lot of cars on the market right now, like an 80 amp charger doesn't help them because it can't accept
Right.
it. So
Right.
I think just continuing to stay on top of, those new vehicles from the OEMs and what those use cases are, is probably the most important thing of it. And then, thinking about, is it appropriate to put in chargers at my location? Obviously, selfishly, I would love to put chargers in at every location possible. But sometimes it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Or, looking at what's around you and what's available and your consumer and, many different factors, it may be a no. And,
Yeah.
the numbers don't add up and you need to walk away from it. But, you really need a strategic partner to like walk you through that and help you understand if it's a good fit or not.
Yeah. So if I can kind of sum that up, what I heard was don't follow trends, follow standard business strategy planning practices. Look at your customers, look at your goals, look at your location, and then build the right solution
Yep,
for those factors and make sure it makes sense for you. And don't kind of follow that bright shiny object of whatever's new that you read about, in the media. Really make sound business decisions, and then you can go follow some of those new technologies that fit for you.
absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, Jake, so much for your time today. You gave us a ton of insights. I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot. I know that the folks on the call really learned a lot as well. And I know Nicolette said this will be sent out to all the attendees. So we encourage you guys to, whether it's listen to it again or send it out to your colleagues. We hope that this was helpful for you, and we're grateful for your time spent with us this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are. Jake, again, thank you. We really appreciate your insights and your time today leading up to this and giving us this time today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.